Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a story of absolute unchecked power, a massive political conspiracy, and what is honestly perhaps the ultimate historical irony. We're looking at the assassination of Julius Caesar and the complete, devastating collapse of the Roman Republic. Now, this isn't just ancient history. It's a completely fascinating study of how an attempt to save a political system actually totally guaranteed its permanent destruction.
Okay, let's dive right into this by jumping straight to the climax. Just imagine the total chaos, the sheer desperation happening on the floor of the Roman Senate. Surrounded by a literal storm of blades, Julius Caesar, the undisputed master of the Roman world, is fighting for his life. But, as the quote we're looking at here highlights, it wasn't the physical violence that finally defeated him. It was the devastating emotional blow of seeing someone he had forgiven, promoted, and treated almost like a son, standing right there among his killers. But how did Rome actually get to this incredibly bloody and personal climax?
Well, to make sense of that, let's quickly walk through the timeline of this betrayal. We're going to cover Rome's unrivaled master, architecting the betrayal, the warnings and omens, the Ides of March itself, and finally, how an empire was born. All right, Act 1. Rome's unrivaled master, the victor returns. So, following a pretty brutal civil war, February of 44 BC brought a fundamental tectonic shift to Rome. Caesar was named dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. Now, to his supporters, this was just a necessary reward for bringing stability back after years of devastating conflict. But to the traditionalist senators, they viewed this permanent concentration of power as the absolute death of the republic they had sworn a sacred oath to protect. The ideological contrast here is just incredibly stark. You see, Caesar viewed his growing collection of honors, like getting statues placed among ancient kings or his face stamped on coins, as simple rewards for saving Rome. But the senators, they saw the terrifying birth of a monarchy. Even if Caesar publicly refused a royal crown when his ally Mark Antony offered it to him at a festival, the traditionalists saw a king in all but name. And the word king was something that struck ancient, deep-seated fear into Roman hearts.
Which brings us to part 2, architecting the betrayal. A conspiracy takes shape.
Now, the dynamic between the plot's two leaders is absolutely vital to understand. On one hand, you have Gaius Cassius. He's the sharp, calculating, and deeply resentful true architect of the conspiracy. But he knew he couldn't do it alone. He needed Marcus Brutus. You see, Brutus was a descendant of the very men who had overthrown Rome's last king centuries earlier. Cassius brilliantly recognized that if a man with the historical name of Brutus led the assassination, the public wouldn't view this as some grubby political murder. They'd see it as a righteous liberation. 60. That is a staggering number. Over a matter of weeks, this conspiracy quietly ballooned to include more than 60 senators. So this wasn't just some small fringe group of rogue assassins. This was a massive, highly coordinated internal coup. And that number, 60, was very deliberate. By ensuring that dozens of senators were involved, they guaranteed no single man could be singled out and punished. In their minds, guilt, and actually, more importantly, safety, would be shared equally among all of them. Moving into Part 3, Warnings and Omens, the Ignored Science. They chose their date very carefully, March 15th. This was Caesar's final planned appearance before leaving the city for a massive military campaign in Parthia. But the build-up to this date was incredibly eerie. We've all heard the famous warning, right? "Beware the Ides of March," yelled to Caesar in a busy street by a soothsayer. Yet Caesar, ever confident and riding the high of his completely unchallenged power, just totally dismissed this. He brushed it off, along with unsettling reports of heartless sacrificial animals and weird dramatic storms over the city, as just foolish superstition. And just think about the agonizing near misses that happened mere hours before his death. The night before, his wife Calpurnia dreams of him being murdered and literally begs him to stay home. And Caesar actually considers it. But then Decimus Brutus, a conspirator who Caesar trusted deeply, manipulates his pride, telling him that skipping the Senate would make him look weak and afraid. So he goes. Then there's this deeply painful detail. On his way there, a man named Artemidorus hands him a scroll detailing the entire conspiracy by name. But surrounded by crowds, Caesar just tucks it away, unread. One red scroll could have completely changed the course of human history.
Part 4, the Ides of March, anatomy of an assassination.
Because the regular Senate House was under renovation, they actually met in an annex directly beneath a statue of Pompey, Caesar's defeated rival in the Civil War. Step 1. Tullius Cimber approaches with a fake petition to recall his exiled brother, grabs Caesar's toga, and yanks it down. This is the signal. Step 2. Casca strikes a glancing blow to the neck. Then, Step 3 initiates, and it is a completely chaotic storm of blades. I mean, with over 60 men trying to strike at once, it's so frantic they're accidentally stabbing each other in the crush. Caesar is desperately fighting them off until, Step 4, he sees Brutus, with his dagger raised, and the fight just goes out of him entirely.
23. That's the number of stab wounds Caesar suffered, but here is an absolutely striking historical detail. When the physician later examined his body, he determined that out of those 23 wounds, only one, a strike to the chest, was actually fatal. It's an incredible testament to the chaotic, terrified frenzy of the assassins. Caesar finally collapsed and bled out right at the foot of Pompey's statue, almost as if history itself had engineered the poetic justice.
And this brilliantly illustrates Part 5, An Empire is Born, the tragic aftermath.
So, the conspirators, they honestly believed they were going to walk out of that theater to cheering crowds. They thought they'd be celebrated by the Senate and the citizens as liberators who just restored the Republic. But the actual reality? Pure panic. Most senators who weren't in the plot fled in absolute horror. When the assassins marched out into Rome with their bloody daggers raised, they didn't find cheers. They found horrific confusion and eerily silent streets as a terrified populace bolted their doors.
It literally only took a few days for the liberators to completely lose the narrative. Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal ally, seizes the political moment. He steps up and reads Caesar's will to the grieving Roman citizens. He delivers this absolute masterclass of a funeral oration that weaponizes their grief, shifting the public mood from shock straight into absolute fury. Suddenly, there are rioting mobs with torches attacking the conspirators' homes. Brutus and Cassius, the guys who thought they were saving Rome, are forced to run for their lives and flee the very city they just liberated.
The scale of this backfire is just monumental, and it's a profound lesson in how quickly political intentions can flip. Let's look at it. In 44 BC, they assassinated a dictator to save the Republic and stop one-man rule. But instead, they trigger over a decade of brutal civil wars that ravaged the entire Mediterranean, pitting Caesar's assassins against his allies and then his allies against each other. And the ultimate outcome of all this, rising from the ashes of that chaos, is Caesar's adopted heir, a young man named Octavian. He consolidates power completely as Rome's first true emperor. Instead of restoring freedom, the assassins permanently entrench the exact absolute monarchy they feared.
Which leaves us with this final, profound question to consider today. By trying to save the Republic with daggers in the dark, did the conspirators actually guarantee its permanent destruction? It's a truly fascinating look at the unintended consequences of power, betrayal, and political violence. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope checking out these points helped bring this incredible piece of history into sharp focus for you. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.